Yo, YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy, Abezy, and we are back with another video, guys. And, dude, what in the world? We are only a few days away from crowning a Call of Duty champion and closing the book on Modern Warfare. It's going to be a wild weekend, to say the least. There's 4 teams remaining, obviously. FaZe, Empire, Huntsmen, London, Royal Ravens. So, of course, we'll be going over the first matchups today, and we'll be going over outright favorites, and then a few more interesting prop bet type stuff that we can talk about. I think there's a lot of fun, interesting conversations to be had about these final 4 teams. I'm really going to be diving into these matches, looking at stats, potential map vetoes, records against each other last times they played, and really try to dive in and see if we can break the code and figure out who's going to be winning these matches. I'm excited to talk about it, but of course, first, we got to talk about Midnight. So truly, this was the type of video I wanted to do before Midnight even reached out to me about this. You saw in the past, I've done some videos about esports betting in the past that were not sponsored or anything else. I'm just generally interested in sports betting. I was a sport management major in college. Sports has always been my thing, and betting has always been a really interesting side of sports. And you can learn a lot about your sport and about what potentially could happen from the people who are setting the odds for betting, because they have to be right to make money. So it does get really interesting. Long story short, Midnight makes esports betting insanely easy. You can level up your esports betting with Midnight and get closer to the games and communities you love. Like, legitimately, no BS. You go to the site, it's really simple, and I think they have like the most easy to understand odds out of like any website out there for betting, because it's just a multiplier. If you bet 10, it's a 1.64 multiplier. Now you're getting 1640. It's just simple math, which is really fun. And they have a lot of different options for outright bets. You can bet on just one map, or you can bet on who's going to win the tournament. You know, there's a lot of different options and customizable odds, and you can parlay things as well for those of you who are expert bettors out there. But it is a fun time. I really appreciate Midnight, and the link is down in the description. You can go check them out. Use code SALVATION to support myself, support the channel. I do appreciate that. Of course, I just want to say, gamble responsibly. You know, don't ever push your boundaries of what you can do personally. It's all about playing within your means and having some fun with it. That's really where gambling is its best. But without further ado, let's get right into the video and talk about these insane matchups and this weekend as a whole. Let's go. So looking at the website, we got our matchups here. We've got London versus Chicago, and we've got Empire versus FaZe. So looking at the odds right off the rip, Huntsman's odds are at a 1.64, London's are at a 2.18. FaZe is at a 1.82, Empire's at a 1.93. So reasonably, I think the Huntsmen are the biggest favorites of the weekend. But surprisingly enough, I actually feel like London isn't big enough underdogs for this type of matchup. The outright odds are just straight up who's going to win the tournament. And Atlanta FaZe is at a 2.32, Dallas Empire is at a 2.12. So they're actually the favorites to win CoD Champs. The Huntsmen are at an 8.6, and London is at a 10. So Chicago is pretty massive underdogs here versus like Dallas or Atlanta. So for example, if you put 10 pounds down on Huntsman, if they won the tournament, you'd walk away with 86 pounds. So that's pretty crazy. Alrighty, so let's talk about these matchups. Let's start with the winners bracket, the massive matchup, Empire versus FaZe. I think this is a really interesting matchup, and like my initial instinct right off the rip is I think FaZe has the advantage going into this. Of course, FaZe is just coming off of a 3-2 win versus the Huntsmen, and the Empire coming off a 3-2 win versus the Toronto Ultra. I mean, again, going into it, my initial instinct just tells me I think FaZe is going to win, but let's dive in a lot deeper than that. So now it's been about a month since the last time they played. They did play at the last tournament of the year, which was CDL Toronto, where FaZe won 3-0. They won 250, 219 on Gunrunner, 6-5 on Gunrunner, and 160, 155 on Gunrunner. It was a really close series all the way through, but it was a 3-0 at the end of the day. And the previous time before that they played was a month before that, so 2 months ago, and that was at the end of June, and FaZe won 3-2 in a FaZe 250 to 145 on Cave. Empire took it 6-4 on Piccadilly. FaZe won 163 to 131 on Gunrunner. Empire won 250 to 209 on Gunrunner, and then FaZe won 6-4 on Gunrunner. So FaZe has won their last 2 matchups. They're going into this one feeling pretty hot coming into it, and they have the higher seed, which means that they get to pick either Team A or Team B, so they're going to have the advantage in the veto process as well. I'm going to put the team's map records up on the screen while we're talking about this. You can see where I'm coming from here. So here's my series prediction for what the maps are going to be. I think we're going to end up playing a Petro Hardpoint, Piccadilly S&D, Gunrunner Domination, Hackney Hardpoint, and Gunrunner S&D. Because of how these vetoes work out, and because FaZe has the higher seed, they're not going to want to play Hackney Dom. So I'm very confident that we're going to end up playing Gunrunner Dom. And I'd be very surprised if we see Arklov S&D, and I'd be very surprised if we see Ramaza Hardpoint or Cave Hardpoint because of Empire's strength and then FaZe's strength on Cave. But I'm pretty confident we're in the right direction with this series here. So on a Petro Hardpoint, FaZe is 10-3 on the year, Empire is 5-5. Again, these don't take into account their most recent series, so the CoD Champs series. Doesn't matter as much for these teams because they've only played one map. I guess for like London or for the Huntsmen, so they played multiple maps, it might matter a little bit more. But again, FaZe 10-3 on the year, Empire 5-5. I think FaZe takes the Petro hardpoint in map 1, so they're already up 1-0. We're going to Piccadilly S&D. This is interesting. I think Empire has the advantage in this map. They're 7-3, FaZe is 4-5 on the year. I think this might get evened up 1-1 with Empire taking Piccadilly. They just beat the Ultra on it 6-2, and the Ultra have been pretty good on Piccadilly throughout the year. I feel pretty confident about Empire in a map 2, so now the series is even up 1-1. So the Gunrunner Dom is definitely interesting. So I think FaZe would have their choice of sides. That's a slight advantage to FaZe. Empire lost their Gunrunner Dom to Toronto. FaZe won their Gunrunner Dom against the Huntsmen. I'm pretty confident in FaZe winning this Gunrunner Dom, putting them up 2-1, heading into a Hackney hardpoint. It's definitely getting interesting already because Hackney hardpoint could go either way. FaZe is 5-4 on the year. Empire is 7-2. I would give the advantage to Empire here. I mean, I know the record's slightly better, but Empire, they played it last time they played it. They dominated Paris. The last time that FaZe played it, they lost to the Huntsmen. The track record would show that Empire would definitely be favored in this map, although FaZe would have the better side, which is a factor for sure. Man, this could come right down to the wire. I'm going to take Empire in like a 250 to 237, like really close hard point here at the end. And that sends us to a Gunrunner Game 5. So in a Game 5, S&D on Gunrunner, which would be insane in itself, and the hype would be real, I think I would have to pick Atlanta FaZe to win the Gunrunner. I have so much faith in Atlanta FaZe all the way through on this map. They've looked fantastic year long, and like I love their strats and how Abezy plays inside of pipes and offices and how he's so good at getting first bloods on Gunrunner as a whole. I mean, again, Empire is no slouch on Gunrunner. They've been really good on the year with how they use Illy with the sniper at some points and how they play with those strats. At the end of the day, I have a little bit more faith in FaZe to win like 6-4 Game 5. So I do think that the odds are right on with this. They're narrowly favorites. If I was putting down cash, I would bet on FaZe. So finally, let's move on to this Huntsmen versus London match. Again, they've only played basically one time in the past like 2 months. They barely played each other, and that was at the New York event, which was on a 9mm meta. So there isn't much to take away from that match. At least in my mind, I've had a big old asterisk next to that event because it was the only event where we played 9mm meta. We don't really have that much takeaway from this overall, and the vetoes are harder to pick in this series. So all things considered, I think people are kind of sleeping on London, although the midnight odds for London really aren't that bad. They're actually pretty good overall. But let's look at the series and see how it might go down. Like I said, they played in New York. Huntsmen won 3-1. They lost to Gunrunner map 1, 250-201. Then the Huntsmen won 6-2 Piccadilly, 164-149 on St. Petro, and 250-210 on Hackney. All things considered, when you look at their map pool and you look at how these teams play out, I really think the Huntsmen have a pretty nice advantage in this series. London's been hot, and I totally get that. London's been really hot. Construct, Shawnee, 0, but maybe they were only hot for one weekend. It's hard to keep the momentum going into another weekend. And I have so much faith in the veterans on the Huntsmen to take care of business and just play more consistent Call of Duty overall versus like what I have faith in London so far this season. I mean, it's been really inconsistent to say the least. But let's go through this real quick. It's a lot harder to predict for maps than the other one because the matchup isn't as obvious or like with their strengths and weaknesses. But I have it playing out as a Cave Hardpoint, Gunrunner S&D, Petro Dom, Petro Hardpoint, and Piccadilly S&D. So I'm feeling very confident about the Huntsmen winning this match and punching their ticket into the top 3 at this point. I mean, they would definitely be favored in a Gunrunner S&D. That's probably been the S&D map where London's been most comfortable, but the Huntsmen have looked really good on it lately. I would have a lot of faith in the Huntsmen winning that one as well, going up 2-0. Then you're going into a Petro Dom, which again, I would have a lot of faith in the Huntsmen. If this could easily be a 3-0, but I'm going to give London the benefit of the doubt that they snag that S&D, or maybe the Huntsmen come out slow and they somehow get upset on the Cave Hardpoint. But all things considered with this series, you know, I think it's going to be a 3-0 or a 3-1. I would still have a lot of faith in the Huntsmen to clutch up in a Game 5, especially if it's on Piccadilly. I know Wuskin has been dangerous on the map in the past, but overall on the season, the record for London isn't that impressive on Piccadilly. It's 3-5. Chicago's 3-3. So nothing crazy there. The X factor might be Ramaza here because London and Chicago have been much more willing to play Ramaza lately. So maybe I'm underestimating that these teams actually like Ramaza, and that could show up maybe twice in S&D and in Hardpoint in this series. That would kind of be the X factor, but right now with the maps that I have right here, I think it might be a 3-0. Huntsmen, maybe a 3-1 if London steals the S&D. So the Huntsmen are moving on. So when you consider the odds, I mean, I'm honestly not sure if I'd rather bet on the Huntsmen or if I'd rather bet on FaZe. I'm more confident in the Huntsmen winning, but you're gonna inherently make less cash So that's kind of the trade-off there. Obviously, it's generally how it goes, but I do feel pretty confident in the Huntsmen winning this series. So I would probably put my money down on Chicago to make it happen. So with all that in mind, I think FaZe beats Dallas. I think the Huntsmen beat London. Here's the outright odds now. Again, FaZe at a 2.32, Dallas is at 2.12, and Chicago at 8.60. But one thing's for sure, I would not put my money on Dallas in any situation here to win champs. I think FaZe is in a really good spot to win champs because their map pool against Dallas is so much deeper. And unless Dallas has like really improved on multiple maps, they need to improve on a second map in Dom besides just Hackney, and they really need to improve on a third map in S&D to make it really dominant for them to have a good chance in this best of 9 series if they were to make it back there. Long story short, I don't think Dallas is a good bet at all for champs. So in a losers match where Dallas loses to FaZe and the Huntsmen beat London, it could be an insanely close series and could go either way. I would probably favor Dallas just slightly, but on the season, the Huntsmen have had the best of Dallas over and over and over, and that is truly an X factor at the end of the day. Long story short, I think Chicago should have way better odds than they do. So when it comes to the odds and the bets, I would put my money on Chicago because how outrageously high their odds are to win outright. I know if you beat Dallas, then you have to go and play a 1 map disadvantage against FaZe next weekend. But at the end of the day, 1 map isn't that insane, all things considered. And you look at the map counts and how FaZe and Huntsmen line up, and it would be a rematch from the winners semis, 2 rounds ago. And that went game 5. And I think the Huntsmen overall have a pretty good chance to make something happen against FaZe, better than I think Dallas does in a rematch situation, all things considered. So end all be all, my final prediction, I still believe FaZe is going to win the championship. So, even though the odds are incredibly good for the Huntsmen, I think FaZe is still going to win, but the odds are so high for the Huntsmen, it might be worth throwing down a few on the Huntsmen. They're nearly 4 times less likely to win based off these odds than FaZe or Empire, and I think that's a little bit ridiculous. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I mean, drop all your comments down below about what you think about the predictions, my thoughts, and everything else. I want to see what you guys have to say. But as always, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm excited for CoD Champs on Saturday and Sunday. It's gonna be a blast, and I'll be doing a watch party on Twitch. Pull up the stream, watch it with me. It'll be a blast. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, like, comment, subscribe. I do appreciate it. Try to do this full time, and I cannot do that without you guys, so I really do appreciate it. But as always, guys, I'm your boy, Abezy, and we will see you next time. I'm out.